Max, you gotta read our daily word. Bird, bird, bird. The bird is a word. And we're gonna read Mark Mark 7:14 to 37. Then Jesus called to the crowd to come and hear. All of you listen, he said, and try to understand. You are not defiled by what you eat. You are defiled by what you say and do. Then Jesus went into the house to get away from the crowd, and his disciples asked him what he meant by the statement he had made. Don't you understand either? He asked. Can't you see that what you eat won't defile you? Food doesn't come in contact with your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then comes out again. By saying this, he showed that every kind of food is acceptable. And then he added, it is throughout life, it's thought life that defiles you. For from within, out of a person's heart, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, eagerness for lustful pleasure, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these vile things come from within. They are what defile you and make you unacceptable to God. Then Jesus left Galilee and went up north to the region of Tyre. He tried to keep it a secret that he was there, but he couldn't. As usual, the news of his arrival spread fast. Right away, a woman came to him whose little girl was possessed by an evil spirit. She had heard about Jesus, and now she came and fell at his feet. She begged him to release her child from the demon's control. Since she was a Gentile, born in Syrian, Phoenician, Jesus told her, first I should help my own family, the Jews. Isn't it right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs? It isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs. She replied, that's true, Lord, but even some dogs under the table are giving some crumbs from the children's plates. Good answer, he said, and because you have answered so well, I have healed your daughter. And when she arrived home, her little girl was lying quietly in the bed, and the demon was gone. Jesus left Tyre and went to Sidon, then back to the Sea of Galilee. In the region of 10 towns, a deaf man with a speech impediment was brought to him, and the people begged Jesus to lay his hands on the man to heal him. Jesus led him in a private place away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears. Then, spitting onto his own finger, he touched the man's tongue with a little spittle. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and commanded, be open. Instantly, the man could hear perfectly and speak plainly. Jesus told the crowd not to tell anyone, but the more he told them not to, the more they spread the news. For they were completely amazed. Again and again, they said, everything he does is wonderful. He even heals the deaf and mute. Now we got to go to 2 Samuel 17. 2 Samuel 17. Now, Ahithophel urged Absalom, let me choose 12,000 men to start out after David tonight. I'll catch up to him while he was weary and discouraged. He and his troops were panicked, and everyone will run away. Then I will only kill the king, and I will bring all the people back as a bride returns to her husband. After all, it is only this man's life that you seek. Then all the people will remain unharmed and peaceful. This plan seemed good to Absalom and to all the leaders of Israel. But then Absalom said, "Bring the Hushite, the Archite. Let's see what he thinks about this." When the Hushai arrived, Absalom told him what Ahithophel had said. Then he asked, "What is your opinion? Should we not follow Ahithophel's advice? If not, speak up." Well, Hushai replied, This time I think Ahithophel has made a mistake. You know your father and his men. They are mighty warriors. Right now they are probably as enraged as a mother bear who has been robbed of her cubs. And remember that your father is an experienced soldier. He won't be spending the night among the troops. He'll probably already hidden in some pit or cave. And when he comes out and attacks, and a few of your men fall, there will be panic among your troops, and everyone will start shouting that your men are being slaughtered. Then even the bravest of them, though they have a heart of a lion, will be paralyzed with fear. For all Israel knows what a mighty man your father is, and how courageous his warriors are. I suggest that you mobilize the entire army of Israel, bringing them as far as Dan and Beersheba. That way you have an army as numerous as the sands on the seashore. And I think that you should personally lead the troops. When we find David, we can descend on him like dew that falls to the ground, so that not one of his men is left alive. And if David has escaped into some city, you will have an entire army of Israel, the entire army of Israel there at your command. Then we can take ropes and drag the wall of the city into the nearest valley until every stone is torn down. Then Absalom and all the leaders of Israel said, Hushai's advice is better than Ahithophel's. For the Lord has arranged to defeat the counsel of Ahithophel, which really was the better plan, so that he could bring disaster upon Absalom. Then Hushai reported to Zodek and Abiathar, the priest, that Ahithophel had said and what he himself had suggested. Quick, he told them, find David and urge him not to stay at the shallows of the Jordan River tonight. He must go across once into the wilderness beyond. Otherwise, he would die and his own army with him. Jonathan, Ahisamah, had been saying at Engro, so as not to be seen entering and leaving the city. Arrangement had been made for a servant girl to bring them the message they were taking to King David. But a boy saw them leaving Engro. Go to David, and he told Absalom about him. Meanwhile, they escaped Baram, where a man hid them inside a well in his courtyard. The man's wife put a cloth over the top of the well with grain on it to dry in the sun, so no one suspected they were there. When Absalom's men arrived, they asked her, have you seen Ahisamah and Jonathan? She replied, they were here, but they crossed the brook. Absalom's men looked for them without success and returned to Jerusalem. The two men crawled out of the well and hurried to King David. Quick, they told him, cross the Jordan tonight. And they told him how Ahithophel had advised that he be captured and killed. So David and all the people with him went across the Jordan River during the night, and they were all on the bank before dawn. Meanwhile, Ahithophel was publicly disgraced when Absalom refused his advice. So he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. He died there and was buried beside his father. David soon arrived at Mahanaim. By now, Absalom had mobilized the entire army of Israel and was leading his troops across the Jordan River. Absalom had appointed Amasa as commander of his army, replacing Joab, who had been commander under David. Amasa was Joab's cousin. His father was Jether, an Ishmaelite. His mother, Abigail, daughter of Nahash, was the sister of Joab's mother, Zeruiah. Absalom and the Israelite army set up camp in the land of Gilead. When David arrived at Manahan, he was warmly greeted by Shobi, son of Nahash of Rabbah, an Ammonite, and by Machir, son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai of Gilead from Rogelim. They brought sleeping mats, cooking pots, serving bowls, wheat, barley, and food and flour, roasted grains, beans, lentils, honey, butter, sheep, and cheese for David and those who were with him. For they said, "You must be very tired and hungry and thirsty after your long march through the wilderness." Daniel 11:20. No, 2 Samuel 18. Whew. I can't even remember the date. I'm all discombobulated. Stop. Bible 25. That's what I thought. 2 Samuel 18. David now appointed generals and captains to lead his troops. 1/3 were placed under Joab, 1/3 under Joab's brother Abishai of Zeruiah, 1/3 under Ittai the Gittite. The king told his troops, "I am going out with you." But his men objected strongly. "You must not go," they urged. "If we have to turn and run and even half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troops. They will be looking only for you. You are worth 10,000 sands of us. It is better that you stay here in the city and send us help if we need it. If you think that's the best plan, I'll do it." The king finally agreed. So he stood at the gate of the city, and all the divisions of troops passed by. And the king gave his command to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, "For my sake, deal gently with young Absalom." And all the troops heard the king give his order to his commanders. So the battle began in the forest of Ephraim, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. There was a great slaughter, and 20,000 men laid down their lives that day. The battle raged all across the countryside, and more men died because of the forest than were killed by the sword. During the battle, Absalom came unexpectedly upon some of David's men. He tried to escape on his mule, but as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great oak, his head got caught, his mule kept going, and he left him dangling in the air. And one of David's men saw what had happened to Joab. "I saw the Absalom dangling in a tree." "What?" Joab demanded. "You saw him and didn't kill him? I would have rewarded you 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt." "I wouldn't do it for thousands of pieces of silver," the man replied. "We all heard the king say to you and Abishai and Ittai, 'For my sake, please do not harm young Absalom.' And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, and the king would certainly find out who did it, you yourself would be the first to abandon me." "Enough of this nonsense," Joab said. Then he took 3 daggers and plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangled from the oak tree still alive. 10 of Joab's young armor-bearers then surrounded Absalom and killed him. Then Joab blew the trumpet, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. They threw Absalom's body into a deep pit in the forest and piled a great heap of stone over it. And the army of Israel fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the king's valley, for he said, "I have no son to carry on my name." He named the monument after himself, and it is known as Absalom's monument to this day. Then Zodok's son Ahimaaz said, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord has saved him from his enemy Absalom." No, Joab told him, it wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You can be my messenger some other time, but not today. Then Joab said to a man from Cush, "Go tell the king what you have seen." The man bowed and ran off. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab, "Whatever happens, please let me go too." "Why should I let you go, my son?" Joab replied. "There will be no reward for you." "Yes, but let me go anyway," he begged. Joab finally said, "All right, go ahead." Then Ahimaaz took a shortcut across the plain of Jordan and got to Manningham ahead of the man from Cush. While David was sitting at the city gate, the watchman climbed to the roof of the gate wall. Uh-oh. As he looked, he saw a lone man running toward them. He shouted the news to David. Down to David, the king replied, "If he's alone, he has news." As the messenger came, the watchman saw another man roaring towards him. He shouted, "Here comes another one." The king replied, "He will also have news." "The first man runs like Ahimaaz, the son of Zodok," the watchman said. "He is a good man and comes with good news," the king replied. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king. "All is well." He bowed low with his face to the ground and said, "Blessed be the Lord, your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against you." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" Ahimaaz replied, "When Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion, but I didn't know what was happening." "Wait here," the king told him. So Ahimaaz stepped aside. Then the man from Cush arrived and said, "I have good news for my lord the king. Today the Lord has rescued you from all those who rebelled against you." "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" And the Cushite replied, "May all your enemies, both now and in the future, be as that young man is." Oh, the king was overcome with emotion. He went up to his room over the gateway and burst into tears. As he went, he cried, oh my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I could have died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Oof. It's deep. Daniel 11:20-45. Daniel 11:20-45. His successor will be remembered as the king who sent a tax collector to maintain the royal splendor. But after a very brief reign, he will die through neither battle nor open conflict. The next to come to power will be a despicable man who is not directly in line for royal succession, but he will slip in when least expected and take over the kingdom by flattery and intrigue. Before him, great armies will be swept away, including a covenant prince. By making deceitful promises, he will make various alliances. With a mere handful of followers, he will become strong. Without warning, he will enter into the richest areas of the land and do something that none of his predecessors ever did: distribute among his followers the plunder and wealth of the rich. He will plot to overthrow of strongholds, but this will only last for a short while. Then he will stir up his courage and raise a great army against the king of the south. The king of the south will go to battle with a mighty army, but to no avail. For plots against him, he will succeed. Those of his own household will bring his downfall. His army will be swept away, and many will be killed. Seeking nothing but each other's harm, these kings will plot against each other at the conference table, attempting to deceive each other, but it will make no difference, for an end will still come at the appointed time. The king of the north will then return home with great riches. On the way, he will set himself against the people of the Holy Covenant, doing much damage before continuing his journey. Then at the appointed time, he will once again invade the south, but this time the result will be different. For warships from the western coastline lands will scare him off, and he will withdraw and return home. But he will vent his anger against the people of the Holy Covenant and reward those who forsake the covenant. His army will take over the temple fortress, polluting the sanctuary, putting a stop to daily sacrifices and setting up the sacrilegious objects that cause desecration. He will flatter those who have violated the covenant and will win them over to his side. But the people who know their God will be strong and resist him. Those who are wise will give the instructions to many. But for a time, many of these teachers will die by fire and sword, or will be jailed and robbed. While all these persecutions are going on, a little help will arrive. Though many who will join them will not be sincere, and some who are wise will fall victim to persecution. In this way, they will be refined and cleansed, and in this way, they will and made pure until the time of the end. For the appointed time is still to come. The king will do as he pleases, exalt himself, and claiming to be greater than every god there is, even blaspheming the God of gods. He will succeed until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined will surely take place. He will have no regard for the gods of his ancestor, or for the God of he will have no regard for the gods of his ancestors, or for the God beloved of women, or for any other god, for he will boast that he is greater than them all. Instead of these, he will worship the gods of fortress, a god his ancestors never knew, and lavish on him gold, silver, precious stones, and costly gifts, claiming that this foreign god's help will attack the strongest fortress, and a god his ancestors. He will honor those who submit to him, appointing them to positions of authority and dividing the land among them as their reward. Then at the time of the end, the king of the south will attack him, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots, cavalries, and a vast navy. He will invade various lands and sweep through them like a flood. He will enter the glorious land of Israel, and many nations will fall, but Moab, Edom, and a part of Ammon will escape. He will conquer many countries, and Egypt will not escape. He will gain control over the gold, silver, and treasures of Egypt, and the Liberians and Ethiopians will be his servants. But then the news from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in great anger to destroy as many as he goes. He will halt between the glorious holy mountain and the sea, and will pitch his royal tents there. But while he is there, his time will suddenly run out, and there will be no one to help him. Boom, bam, bam, bam. That's my word for the day. Now I need to hit the hay in the middle of the barn. Spoke it up. That's it. That's all, folks. Max. Ooh. Got our daily word in.